American invasion, designated Operation Detachment, had the goal of capturing the entire island, including the 3 Japanese-controlled airfields, to provide a staging area for attacks on the Japanese main islands. The Japanese had been preparing for this battle since March 1944, which gave them a significant head start. By the time of the landing, about 450 American ships were located off Iwo Jima. The entire battle involved about 60,000 U.S. Marines and several thousand U.S. Navy Seabees. The beaches had been described as excellent, and the thrust inland was expected to be easy. In reality, after crossing the beach, the Marines were faced with 15-foot-high slopes of soft black volcanic ash. After allowing the Americans to pile up men and machinery on the beach, the Japanese unleashed everything from machine guns and mortars to heavy artillery down the crowded beach. Naval Construction Battalions, Seabees, braving enemy fire, eventually were able to bulldoze roads off the beach. This allowed the Marines and equipment to finally make some progress inland and get off the crowded beaches. Fighting on the beachhead was very fierce. The advance of the Marines was stalled by numerous defensive positions, augmented by artillery pieces. Marines were ambushed by Japanese troops who occasionally sprang out of tunnels. At night, the Japanese left their defenses under cover of darkness to attack American foxholes. The Marines learned that firearms were repeatedly ineffective against the Japanese defenders and effectively used flamethrowers and grenades to flush out Japanese troops in the tunnels. One of the technological innovations of the battle, the 8 Sherman M4A3R3 medium tanks equipped with a flamethrower, Bronson or Zippo tanks, proved very effective at clearing Japanese positions. By the morning of 23 February, Mount Suribachi was effectively cut off above ground from the rest of the island. Joe Rosenthal's photograph of the raising of the U.S. flag on top of Mount Suribachi by 6 U.S. Marines in the second of 2 flag raisings on the site that day became an iconic image of the battle and the American war effort in the Pacific. The island was officially declared secure on 26 March after 36 days of fighting. The Army's 147th Infantry Regiment became a garrison force. For 3 additional months, they were locked in a bitter struggle against thousands of stalwart defenders engaging in a last-ditch guerrilla campaign to harass the Americans, eventually killing 1,602 Japanese soldiers in small unit actions. Although Japanese combat deaths numbered 3 times the number of American deaths, Iwo Jima was the only U.S. Marine battle where the American casualties, 26,040 total casualties, 6,821 killed, exceeded the Japanese. Of the 21,000 Japanese soldiers on Iwo Jima at the beginning of the battle, only 216 were taken prisoner. The USS Bismarck C was sunk by kamikaze attack and was the last U.S. aircraft carrier sunk in World War II. The initial invasion of Okinawa was the largest amphibious assault during the Pacific Theater. The 10th Army was responsible for capturing Okinawa and consisted of the U.S. Army's 7th, 27th, 77th, and 96th Infantry Divisions, with the 1st, 2nd, and 6th Marine Corps Divisions. The battle lasted 82 days. Okinawa provided a fleet anchorage, troop staging areas, and airfields in proximity to Japan in preparation for the invasion of the Japanese home islands. The Japanese attached great significance to Okinawa as a decisive battle. The intention was to shake U.S. will prior to the inevitable invasion of Japan and allow the Japanese to negotiate from a position of strength. However, they could not send enough troops to bring the 32nd Army to the strength necessary to achieve this. Okinawa was also the proving ground for new defensive strategies, including reinforced inland positions versus beach defenses, and use of kamikazes and bombers to drive off the U.S. fleet, after which strong counterattacks would drive the U.S. into the sea. Heavy Japanese air attacks by bombers and kamikazes were conducted through April.
The skipper is the one that made gave the figures. You'll see them in my log. Hundreds of kamikazes, hundreds of Japanese planes that we came in contact with, and they were like flies. You could look up at the sky and all you saw was airplanes that looked like flies, and they came down one after the other, coming down at our ships. How many got hit? I don't really know. I know that one of that destroyer that took the bow off, and that took the bow off from the bridge right on forward.
During the period March 22nd through April 30th, 20 American ships were sunk and 157 damaged. By April 30th, the Japanese had lost more than 1,100 planes to Allied naval forces. Between April 6 and June 22nd, the Japanese flew kamikaze aircraft in large-scale attacks from Kyushu and Formosa. The Japanese also tried to enhance the effectiveness of the kamikaze attacks by combining them with parallel distractions, such as a major counterattack of the Army or the suicidal sortie of the super battleship Yamato. Operation Ten-Go was the attempted attack by a strike force of 10 Japanese surface vessels, led by the Yamato. This small task force had been ordered to fight through enemy naval forces, then beach Yamato and fight from shore, using her guns as coastal artillery and her crew as naval infantry. The Ten-Go force was spotted by submarine shortly after it left the Japanese home waters, and was intercepted by U.S. carrier aircraft. The Yamato was sunk on April 7, 1945, after a one-sided battle, long before she could reach Okinawa. The 10th Army swept across the south-central part of the island with relative ease, capturing the Kadena and the Yomitan air bases within hours of the landing. Next, the 6th Marine Division headed up the Ishikawa Isthmus and by April 7 had sealed off the Motovu Peninsula. 6 days later, on April 13th, the Marines reached the northernmost tip of the island. By this point, the bulk of the Japanese forces in the north were cornered on the Motovu Peninsula. Here, the terrain was mountainous and wooded, with the Japanese defenses concentrated on rocky ridges and ravines on the center of the peninsula. There was heavy fighting before the Marines finally cleared the defenses on April 18th. On Lei Island, a small island off the eastern end of the peninsula, on April 16th, the 77th Infantry Division encountered suicide attacks, and even local women armed with spears. There was heavy fighting before the area was declared secured on April 21st, and became another air base for operations against Japan. While the 6th Marine Division cleared northern Okinawa, the U.S. Army 96th and 7th Infantry Divisions moved south. Both divisions immediately encountered fierce Japanese opposition as they met defenses set up to protect Shuri Castle. The Imperial Japanese Army had set up its headquarters in Shuri Castle underground, and had established complex lines of defense and communications in the regions around Shuri, and across the southern part of the island. Loss of Shuri Castle would not only be a strategic victory for the U.S., but also a psychological blow to the Japanese. At the end of April, Army forces were reinforced by the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions and the 77th Infantry Division. Rain caused hills and roads to become nearly impassable due to mud and flooding by the end of May. Life for the troops was unimaginable as Japanese and American bodies decayed in the mud around them. The battle was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific, with approximately 160,000 casualties on both sides, at least 75,000 Allied and 85,000 Japanese, including drafted Okinawans wearing Japanese uniforms. This also included 1,780 middle school boys pressed into frontline service by the Japanese Army. About half of these boys were killed. Over 100,000 Okinawan civilians were killed, committed suicide, or went missing. The civilian suicides were urged on by the Japanese soldiers who told locals that American soldiers would kill them. More mental health issues arose from the Battle of Okinawa than any other battle in the Pacific during World War II. The constant bombardment from artillery and mortars, coupled with the high casualty rates, led to a great deal of personnel coming down with combat fatigue. 90% of the buildings on the island were destroyed, as was the landscape.